Welcome to another episode of the Data Engineering Show. I'm here with Eldad Farkash.
Hey.
I'm Boaz Farkash. And we have an awesome guest with us today, Krishna Naidu. Krishna, how are you?
I'm great. Good to meet the Data Brothers.
So Krishna is joining us from Australia. There's quite a distance among us, but mentally, there's no distance at all. So Krishna is a data engineer and a data architect at Canva. For those who don't know Canva, even though all of you should, Canva is one of the hottest graphic design platforms out there, if not the hottest. Actually, quite interestingly, just recently, it was announced that they raised a bunch of more capital and they are valued at a staggering somewhere between $16 and $19 billion.
Yeah.
Amazing tech story out of Australia. Numbers around 55 million active users, $500 million in annual revenue. Really seems like Canva is unstoppable at this point. And it seems that even data engineers might be able to produce good-looking stuff on Canva. Even as the design illiterate people like data engineers can design beautiful things. And Krishna has been at Canva for a little bit over 2 years.
Just about 2 years, yep.
Really helping the organization scale its data challenges. Krishna, you've been around, I think, 15 years in data, all in all, many years at IBM or so. Anything I've missed about introducing yourself on Canva?
No, all good. Yeah, that was a perfect summary. Thank you.
Okay, so thanks again so much for joining us today. Let's get to it. So as you know, we will dive into the data story. So just to give us a sense of how things look like at Canva with data, how much data do you guys deal with over there? Data volumes?
Data volumes. So in our data warehouse at the moment, it's sitting total, including raw and modeled, is about 400 TB. But so volumes per day is about 2 TB a day in terms of raw data, encompassing everything. Sorry, what's that?
All of those undo buttons, undo clicks, resize, copy paste.
That's right. Our biggest data set, as you can imagine, like you said, is our event tracking table, which captures a lot of our main analytics events.
And how many people are there that actually deal with data across data engineering, analytics, and so forth?
That's a great question. That number is always changing. Today we had a meeting of data engineers. There were 20 of us in the Zoom call. So I'd say about 20 data engineers. Data scientists, I would say around 20-ish as well. Our biggest data specialty is in analytics. And that one is hovering around 40 at the moment.
Is that because of the Zoom maximum amount of
No, that's Zoom, I think, can handle quite a bit these days. But yeah, 40 data analysts, about 20 scientists, and 20 odd data engineers. And we're still hiring. So if you know people, I know you guys are hiring as well, but if you know people,
you're hiring globally, right?
Globally, yeah.
Yes.
Globally, yeah.
Eldad, are you looking for a job?
Actually, yes. I would love to data engineer the undo and redo events in this big table.
So, Krishna, tell us about the data stack. What does the data stack currently look like?
So, yeah, I think the teams is a good segue. So I might start with more of a segmentation of the data eng team. So the data eng team is made up of data platforms, a streaming team, and the data warehouse team. So we can start with the streaming team because that's where the data comes in from, our main data sources. So we have the streaming team bringing in the data, and it comes into our data lake, where it is stored nicely in Delta format, which is our foundation. And our warehouse, we're using Snowflake. We load most of the data from there into the warehouse. And we also enrich this all this data that I just spoke of is considered event first-party data. We also enrich in the warehouse third-party data sets from the likes of Facebook, Google, etc., which don't make it to the lake. So the warehouse has a lot more richness, context around the data and the usage of our users.
By the way, is that because of compliance?
I think it's more of a technical reason. It was hard to wire in things like Facebook data and Google Ads data into our lake, because we use off-the-shelf tools like Fivetran and all that, which integrate nicely with Snowflake warehouse, but not so nicely with, say, Delta Lake, which I think is changing. But when we did wire these things together, we found that a data engineer working on a Facebook connector for a month and making the marketing people wait for that long, and then having the Facebook change the API, requiring another weeks of work, just was too much. And not only was it time consuming, but the data engineers in our team didn't even like doing that kind of work. And that allowed us actually to give control more to the analysts themselves. So they controlled the connectors, because they're the ones who actually have the accounts and the relationships with Facebook, Google, and the ad platforms. So it made sense for them to have more of ownership in ingesting that data as well.
It's interesting that we actually now see the warehouses having richer data than the data lake, which is
that's
crazy,
cool and scary at the same time.
By the way, it was Snowflake coming after the lake? Did you have the lake first and then Delta and then Snowflake, or was that everything in parallel?
That's a good question. So I was actually hired in Canva to revamp the data warehouse. So I joined the team under Jose, who's the data warehouse lead, and we worked together in the past, so we have a good relationship there. So we originally had the lake and a managed Hive Presto cluster. The thing was, as Canva grew, we couldn't scale that platform at all, the data warehouse portion of it, because it was just coupled storage and compute. So we would have to go up quite a bit in order to gain the performance and storage that we needed. So really back then, I think this was 2018-ish. So we had that platform. We had a set of tools alongside that platform. And then two of us, Jose and myself, were doing the first steps of the migration to Snowflake. We did evaluate Snowflake and compared it with Redshift and Athena, but it wasn't really a contest. And especially since we had used these platforms before, it was more to check the boxes that we evaluated other platforms and not just went with our gut feel.
Prior to the migration, how was the pain felt by the business? What
it was painful. Let me tell you. So for a period of about 6 months after I joined, I experienced some of the pain. And I was only there for about 6 months with the legacy platform, and it was really painful. And rebuilding data sets was painful. The version of SQL that platform had was quite old. Things like we didn't have views, we didn't have many features that we would take for granted in even an old data warehouse weren't available. And I would also say this. It really slowed down the contributions made by the analysts. If you look at a chart of the number of PRs and the number of commits to the data warehouse repo, it's pretty low for a long time. And then Snowflake comes in and we have a bunch of new contributors from across the business, not just data analysts being able to contribute. And it also opened up the hiring. So we could actually hire more people because more work could be done. So that technical platform actually put a bottleneck, if you will, on the hiring as well. There was no point hiring more people because not more work could be done. So big difference, definitely.
Nice.
This is the perfect kind of description on the difference between operating a data lake and the data warehouse. The data warehouse, I mean, Snowflake data warehouse would be the perfect example with elasticity in disaggregated storage. Does so much. You can move work to people who are not kind of hardcore engineers. They can focus on value. We see it all over the place. It's amazing, and it's going to be interesting to see how Delta versus Snowflake plays out in the upcoming few years. But
yes,
a big disruption on its way.
Krishna, so everything's in place. Things seem to have been modernized. You guys hired a bunch of people. Tell us a little bit about the use cases, built over the platform with data.
So the use cases that we're working on greatly increased. Like one of the first use cases that we did was marketing attribution. This was a big project. We recently had a celebration for it as well to celebrate that achievement.
How did you celebrate?
How did we celebrate? We went to an axe throwing place.
Axe throwing.
It's a pizza and axe throwing.
Write down axe throwing.
So I did pretty well in the comp as well. Came second. It was pretty. I did consistently well, and then in the final matchup with the team, I totally bombed. So I just have no consistency. Just whatever comes out at the end of my throw, that's what I get.
Well, the poster was probably Presto. You threw it. So no consistency. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was a big one, and well received by, of course, the marketing folks, but also well received in terms of how we could attribute, success to the spending that was being done in marketing. So I'm by no means, I'm just a data engineer. I don't understand all the different algorithms they use to associate revenue to each spend, but they seem to be very happy. And they can also run models like, if we change this variable, this is how attribution would change, which we couldn't do before. It was just one fixed model, and it wouldn't even work for different use cases or different scenarios that they wanted to try. So that was a big use case right after the migration. Other use cases that come to mind, an operational use case just for, this is not so much a warehouse use case, but more of a thing that we did for our customer service team to be able to look at the events of users and troubleshoot for them. Again, wouldn't have been possible in the previous system. And we were able to get pretty good performance for our customer service team to look at a big table, the big event table, and just retrieve all the events for a particular user. And we're working on some exciting stuff now as well, which we can talk about.
Let's do that.
Let's do that. Sure. Okay. What are we working on now? This is more of this particular feature my colleague is working on. It's really, we're really passionate about it. This is about enhancing or improving our analyst productivity. So right now and in the past, when an analyst developed a change, it would be a shared environment. So they would put new code in, new SQL in, they would run some models, but in a sense, they're competing with the other analysts who are also working in that environment, right? So it introduces challenges in terms of dependencies between the SQL models, and in the odd cases, they might step on each other's toes, like they might be modifying the same table.
No transactions, no versioning?
This is more of a developer efficiency kind of use case.
Which tools are they working with?
They work with a source code control GitHub for their source code control, plus, but whatever models they build, they have to run them on the warehouse, right? They have to run them in a dev environment or a prod-like environment. The issue is that we have about 30 of them 30 analysts now, 30 or 40. So you can imagine there's 30 or 40 people working at any one time in the dev environment.
Like $2 times 30.
Yeah. Cost is part of the issue, but not really the main one. The main thing is we can't guarantee that their work is sandboxed. So this initiative is to make each change, each PR that they work on, give them a new environment for that PR. So I'm working on a change to the marketing attribution tables, for instance. Once I push my code to GitHub, I put in a GitHub comment, and it spawns a new environment for me for that PR, for that pull request. If I have another pull request, another environment. So we don't just have a dev staging prod. We have PR 1456, PR 1786. So then the workflow becomes, okay, I can test my changes. I can rebuild some data sets if I need to deploy it into production. And we couldn't have imagined this. If you had asked me 5 years ago how you would do this, I would say, get out of here, right? But with cloning in Snowflake particularly, this is possible. It's a metadata operation, as you know, and we can clone production, give it to them, and then once it's done, destroy it.
How is that all orchestrated, and how many people participate in building that initiative?
Okay. It's all orchestrated using just using GitHub and our build pipeline, which is called BuildKite. So pretty much all shell script, BuildKite, and GitHub. That's how it's all glued together. And of course, SQL to do the clones and all that. And of course, an important feature or part of this is DBT. We use DBT, which I'm excited that you guys are going to be supporting soon. So good stuff. So yeah, that's how it's all put together. And we use the fact that they're pushed. We use the events that come from GitHub to trigger things. And if they want to refresh the clone, they type in something in GitHub. So once they type in that GitHub comment, it's like a special comment. It will trigger a clone and then give them the new environment for them to use. How many people worked on this? Just 2 of us, really. The goal is owned by one person, and there's one support person. The support person is me. And we've given the task to a person who newly joined the team, I think six-ish months ago, and he loves it. Yeah.
It's absolutely amazing. I think, decoupling storage and compute, how that has revolutionized things, and the kind of things it allows us to do compared to, like you said, 5 years ago was not, we couldn't imagine that, is unbelievable. Also seeing how data folk today essentially work more like software engineers in the past. I mean, if you talked about 2 data warehouse specialists years back, there was no, CI, CD, Git. The thinking was not.
There was one version, and if you wanted more, it would be called dev stage. And it's because of data engineering and what we're doing with data. And teams work on the model. They change the schema. They want versioning. I think the next step, kind of the next evolution in data warehousing, should not just be SQL and then managing resources with SQL. It's also managing versioning, branching, committing, directly embedded in the data warehouse. Data warehouse should connect to GitHub, use GitHub just like it uses S3. That's kind of a natural component of the data warehouse. And I think, data warehousing will shift towards data engineering and introduce new stuff. And what you're building now, kind of wiring, is kind of exactly what this market needs. So amazing.
I think it's one of the most exciting use cases or implementation.
We're super excited about this kind of specific change where you see individuals owning the metadata, individuals expanding the metadata, playing with it, sharing it, and everything is intertwined and working. And you can go back, undo, redo, just like a canvas.
Yeah.
When is it ready?
So we work on seasons or quarters. So this will be ready at the end of this season, which is the end of what is it? End of April. Yeah, end of April, mid-May, let's say.
And you have the time to go on data shows and podcasts. There is no pressure. There's no.
Well, this is after hours, so all good. This is, after hours. I can do. We can talk about what we do. We can. Our leadership team is quite passionate about us expanding our horizons and sharing our work as well. So this is all good. Yeah.
Okay, awesome stuff. Now let's change moods a little bit. Are you ready for some Blitz round questions?
Blitz round questions. Okay.
Okay, don't overthink. Just answer. Let's see what you come up with. Commercial or open source?
Commercial.
Batch or streaming?
Streaming.
Write your own SQL or use a drag and drop visualization tool?
Write your own.
Your own. Work from home or from the office?
Ooh, from home, but on occasion from the office for the food.
My favorite answer. AWS, GCP, or Azure?
AWS.
To DBT or not to DBT?
DBT. Definitely to DBT.
To Delta Lake or not to Delta Lake?
Not to Delta Lake. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Good, awesome. That's good. That's how the Blitz.
Visio or Canva?
Canva for sure. We need more templates for engineering diagrams in Canva, but it'll get there.
Tell us though, Delta Lake, how long have you guys been using that? And when did you realize you should consider that? And how did that sort of come into play?
That's a good question. So some of these decisions were before my time. So we've been using the lake concept of a lake for a while. At some point, I think, and don't quote me on this, this was about a year before I arrived. So that's 2017. That's probably when they applied the Delta OSS on the lake. To be fair, we have a raw lake as well, where it's just JSON files, and then they apply Delta OSS, apply that file format to get benefits of that file format over the lake. And then we have that legacy warehouse as well, operating on the side. Both the warehouse and the lake were consuming from the raw lake. Sorry, both the warehouse and the Delta Lake were consuming from the raw lake. We're more changing slowly to Snowflake now consuming from the Delta Lake, just to not repeat some of the work that we're doing in the Delta Lake. The Delta Lake does some very good work in terms of applying schema, removing a level of dedupes. We do more deduping in Snowflake, but we don't want to lose that effort that was expended on the lake. So we're consuming from the Delta Lake and less from the raw lake. So that's the transition that we made. So the warehouse was always there, or a remnant of some form of the warehouse was always there. Some form of the lake was always there. And I think this strategy will continue, where we have the lake and a warehouse. Data scientists tend to work in the lake, but that's changing as well. We have more and more data scientists coming on board because of the richness of the data. So I tell some of my teammates why that is. Content is king. It doesn't really matter that they can't do certain things, but they have a richness of data available in the warehouse that sometimes is lacking in the lake. And of course, for whatever reason, they might take this data out of the warehouse and do the things that they can't do in the warehouse.
You talked about the analytics team and that exciting project, but in general, tell us a little bit, how do the data engineers and the analytic team members sort of collaborate? How do you guys work together?
Well, that's an excellent question. And we had a workshop lately to explore that even further, because let's go with how we collaborate at the moment. Or how we collaborate in the past. So in the past, it was very much that we were the gatekeepers of anything that went into the warehouse. So we would review every PR that came in. We would have days of the week where we would go, okay, this is your day when you get our time to review your PRs. And that was when pushing changes to the warehouse was much more engineering oriented. You had to worry about dependencies, you had to worry about performance, you had to worry about rebuilding tables. After the advent, or after putting in Snowflake and dbt, dbt took care of the dependencies between the models. So take the engineer out of the question there. Rebuilds of tables are easier with Snowflake as well because you could scale up and down for big tables as needed. So again, take some of the engineering effort out of there. And of course, on the flip side, we found that when we were doing reviews, we didn't have the business knowledge that the analysts had. So we weren't really providing good reviews on the logic of the SQL. So that was the model before. And then after the migration to Snowflake and dbt, we shifted where ownership, not only in logically, but also physically in the source code, we changed the code owners so that we never got pinged when something got changed. So then the analyst did peer reviews. Now what we're seeing is, yes, we have a bunch of analysts, we have a bunch of data engineers, but we want to extend the boundaries of who can make changes to the warehouse. Now we're thinking we have 40 analysts, but we have, 400 backend engineers. Why aren't they empowered to make changes to the warehouse? When we built this platform in Snowflake, we were thinking just about ourselves. We're thinking about data engineers, data analysts, and data scientists. We were pretty much ignoring the rest of Canva.
That's not very nice of you.
So their
Krishna.
job is basically
do not ignore others. Stop thinking about yourself. Come on.
Exactly. So it wasn't even a directed thought. It was just by default. Oh, this is our data platform. This is for us. So now where we're going is we would love back-end engineers to contribute. We would love front-end engineers to contribute. But how can they? So one of the gripes that they have is that you have this massive pipeline. We have thousands of data sources coming in, producing thousands of output tables. They make a change here. They don't like the smell of that. It doesn't smell very engineering oriented. They work in a microservice architecture. So in essence, we're trying to bring some of those principles in the data warehouse now. So that's the goal that I'm working on this season. And it might take 2 seasons to get there. But the concept of small applications in the data warehouse, which are owned by teams, not necessarily backend engineers, but primarily, and they can make data sets out of their raw data sets, and they can choose to publish them or not. So they can have them entirely for internal consumption, or if another person or another team wants it, they can publish it. So the action of publishing it implies that they will need to support it somehow as well. Make sure that schema changes don't affect other models, etc.
What we didn't talk about, what BI tools are higher up in the stack? How are dashboards delivered to the business?
Oh, sure. Good question. So main tool of use for quick querying and quick charts is Mode. But prepared dashboards and all that is done by Looker.
And are analytics people completely self-sufficient on Looker, or do the data engineering?
Yes, completely.
Okay.
Completely self-sufficient. No intervention from us. We don't even see LookML files. We would love to, but we don't. Yeah.
I don't know. It sounds like something many other data engineers actually would envy. You guys not having to deal with that and having the analysts be completely self-sufficient there. You always see the boundaries change across companies. Always interesting to hear. Okay, now for maybe our favorite part. Tell us about an awesome win from your
awesome win. Okay. Yeah. We really were, after our migration, we were actually, one of the things that we were lacking in our stack is just reliability. So changes get pushed in, transform pipeline breaks the next day. So one of the things that has improved this is running the entire transform pipeline with limited data or no data, to just verify that the change that is being merged into master actually works. It doesn't have to be correct in the sense of business logic, but it works. So that drastically reduced the number of days that models were out of date, models were skipped. So from a reliability perspective, I like that. And of course, that needs to be extended to run tests, data tests as well, which, as you mentioned, we're bringing in more principles from engineering. So those can test more the business logic as well and put a checkbox near on that front as well. So yeah, that's what comes to mind.
Now, let's turn in the other direction. Tell us about the glorious failure.
So I think I alluded to this before. I think the failure from our end was to not look at the broader organization when it comes to contributions to data features. I think we were too inwardly focused. And my boss, he made a joke when we were out. We have a forum called Inner Join, right? So the Inner Join is like the inner circle. So all the data people and a few people who dabble in data come to Inner Join. So I think that mindset is probably what sticks out as a failure or something that we could have done better. So instead of Inner Join, it should have been Outer Join or full Outer Join. So we should have included more people, been able, given control, given ownership of raw data sets to those folks who actually own it, rather than it falling on the laps of data analysts who happen to use it or data engineers who happen to load it into the warehouse, because that's what happens now. I load a data set, somehow I become the de facto owner of this billing data that I have very little knowledge of. At least the data analyst has a very good knowledge of the data set. But really, that looking broader is what we didn't do when we migrated. And I think that's what we are working on improving. So that definitely needs to be improved as well. Yeah.
I love this story because it's so easy to, when asked about the failure, to go to the technical stories, and we chose product A versus product B, and then but the people stuff, how we work together, how we enable. Data engineering is all about enabling at the end of the day.
Yeah.
This is why the story is so interesting. What would happen, Krishna, if, let's say, I find my way into your management and convince them to cut your team's budget in half? What would happen in the following year?
So I think many of the core parts of the platform would still continue. What would happen to so you're talking about the data budget, right? The data platform's budget. That's a really good question. So I actually don't know what would happen. I might not be there anymore at Canva. I don't know. So it all depends on where we are at the time. So if we manage to go to a world where back-end engineers and front-end engineers are contributing to the data platform as well, I'm not even sure if that would be a feasible conversation. So what I'm trying to say is, if we look outwards and value is being contributed to the platform and to the assets that are being consumed out of the platform, that conversation of cutting the budget by half hopefully will become more difficult. But if that still does happen, what I hope would happen is that we cut out the fat, so to say, in terms of what we need to hold in the warehouse, or cut out the fat in terms of try to put a metric on what models in the warehouse and what processes in the warehouse are actually contributing to value, and then get rid of the rest that are just historical remnants, like from evolution. that's what I hope would happen. But
and by the way, this is exactly the difference between kind of a data engineering in a growing company versus an IT mindset, where it's all about balances and checks. We've heard it a few times that if you look at how the data evolves in the company, it's very similar to how the company itself evolves. So, like, without operating data at scale, without evolving how we use data at scale, we wouldn't be able to scale. That's kind of something we've heard quite a few times. And I think it goes into Canva as well. Eventually, I think Boaz, it's a tricky question. So it's not about kind of what would happen if we would cut it by half. Instead, what would happen if we would shut it down? What would happen if the data lake wouldn't exist? That's kind of, I think,
what would not happen if we would cut it in half?
Nobody. Yeah, I mean, today I think that's the thing. The data lake and the data warehouse and everything that's being done in data engineering is operational. You can't shut it down.
That's true. A lot of our product features, our experiments, they run on the warehouse. A/B testing. There's a lot of operational stuff that happens as well that we didn't even get a chance to talk about. That conversation, I think, will be much harder to say, oh, we've got to cut it by half. It'll be more like, okay, maybe we can just optimize and just focus on what is delivering value and get rid of the other stuff. Because I'm sure we can optimize. There's always stuff that we can. But yeah, cutting it by half is a tall order.
You wait for IPO and you wait.
So data engineering, unlike what you might think, our dear listeners, is not just fun and glory. Krishna, what are the more annoying things you hate about the job and the daily stuff that we have to deal with as data people?
So I think schema change is something.
Don't change the schema ever, never.
Don't ever change the schema. You hear that? That's something that I guess it's one of the technically annoying things that it's not annoying in the sense that it's not that I don't want it to happen, but it's just annoying that the effects are so it pushes all the way downstream to the models that the business uses, and some of those tables are quite large if you want to fix them. And I haven't seen a good solution where, the change that you do downstream is proportional to the small schema change that is happening upstream. So a small change upstream in the raw layer results in the whole table or whole fact table being rebuilt or something like that. And that, to me, takes a lot of our time as well. We have some tooling around it. So day-to-day, that I hate it when a request like this comes up. We need to rebuild the event table or something like that.
So I think we just coined a new term, the data butterfly effect. A small change upstream, disaster downstream.
A resize ends up as a big mess. Yeah, rebuilding fact tables. That's a big thing. And unfortunately, say that people do that very often, more often than they should. Elasticity makes it less painful. Yet, don't want to rebuild fact tables. They shouldn't be rebuilt. Definitely frustrating,
but they can't help it. I mean, this is
it happens.
Why it's annoying. Yeah. This is why
scheme on read, scheme on write. Semi-structured JSON. How should I manage my metadata? How should I manage metadata changes? It's a never-ending story. It will never end. It will flip between sides, I guess, forever.
Krishna, any advice for young data engineers out there? For the younger, Learn SQL.
This is huge, by the way. This is huge. Yeah. This is kind of like we were taught that as data engineers, we don't need to write SQL. We go below the SQL. We know how things work behind the scenes. We wire stuff. We do stuff. No, SQL is kind of the language for data, and SQL will evolve to support everything in it. So definitely a perfect statement.
SQL is the essence of life, people. Learn it as soon as you can. It's interesting. Parents nowadays, they all want to have these products, teach your kids how to code and stuff like that. Now we should
learn how to join. We should learn how to join more.
Teach your kids how to SQL, not how to code.
it's quite relevant to life. SQL is about relationships, integrating things.
Nice.
I love it. SQL is about relationships.
Any tech companies or leaders in the data space or outside of it that you recommend people will follow that have inspired you?
So I'm passionate about streaming solutions. There was one particular talk that I listened to, I'm not sure on a podcast, but the talk was about a product called Red Panda. It's very obscure, but I've spent a lot of time trying to get better at Kafka and all that, and I've gotten to a stage where I can use it. And then I stumbled upon this platform and this product. And what gets me is the ease of use of this. Basically, it allows you to stream data with guaranteed delivery, which Kafka doesn't quite do unless you change configs. So I guess any product that makes it easy to use for end users is what I gravitate towards. And this particular one is a recent one in my memory because I just played around with it last week. But things like dbt makes dependencies a non-issue. Things like Snowflake makes scale a non-issue. So any product that I see where they are really breaking down the differences between analytics and engineering and combining those two things to form this new profession, I admire.
Also, which product again was that for Kafka?
I think it was Red Panda was the name of the product.
Okay.
The founder was very eloquent, and he rewrote the whole thing in like 2 weeks or something. So from a Java code base, he took it to C++. So it's very performant.
Nice.
Yeah, that really inspired me.
I wish you were an eloquent founder.
Yes,
you could be more eloquent.
I agree. I do agree.
Krishna, thank you so much. This was awesome. Any final last words?
No, I'm looking forward to hearing more about your product. I want to be inspired, and I want to bring performance to insanely fast data analytics. I want to see that.
Thank you.
I'm keen. So in this year and the next year will be very eventful, I'm guessing.
Thank you so much. Amazing session. We heard a lot of amazing insights today. We coined the term the data butterfly effect. We learned about how to work with the analytics team. And we just heard about amazing initiatives in a company that does so much with data. So thank you, Krishna. If you like this episode, click here, there, on the right, on the top, on the left, on the bottom, in front of you, behind you, on the subscribe buttons in their various forms and formats. We were a data engineering show.
You're an amazing host, Boaz.
I try to improve every time.
Until next time, take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.